So they made a retirement dinner for him. The Israelis are nothing if not courteous. They made a retirement dinner for him. And at the retirement dinner for him, Dov Shalansky, who was then the speaker of the Israeli Knesset, who was a very right-wing Likudnik, rose and he said, I want to propose a toast to our colleague, Meir Yaari, who is a national treasure. Well, he said he was a national treasure, so then some of the more vocal members of the Likud rose and said, you know, that's exaggeration. He's a nice old man, but he's not, you know. He said, no, you don't understand me, he said. He's a national treasure. He said, he's the last believing Stalinist in the world. There's no one else left. And the island is turned over. We thought in this country that if we only made enough money for ourselves, if only somehow all of our children would have a college education, our problems would be solved. We now face a Jewish community in this country that is hell-bent on its own self-destruction. What Hitler could not do to us, we are doing to ourselves. We have robbed our children of their heritage. We have squandered it to the extent that it is almost unrecognizable. And the inner emptiness of Western man, of Western society. I was mentioned in the yeshiva that there's a commercial that appears on television that shows 5 rugged men sitting around a campfire drinking a brand of beer. And the bottom of the commercial, the line is, it doesn't get any better than this. Woe to a world where it doesn't get any better than this. In Forest Lawn Cemetery in Los Angeles, which is a museum piece, it really is, there was a man there that he was buried in his Rolls Royce because that was what he had in life. How are we to be remembered? Who will care about us a century from now? Who will remember that they had a grandfather? Who will be part of the Jewish tradition? On the prayers of the High Holy Days, we say, Mi yichyeh u'mi yomus, who shall live and who shall die? Living and dying is not simply a matter of being physically alive. Because we read in the Chumash that the Lord promised us, V'atem advekim b'Hashem Elokeichem chayim kolchem hayom. You who are part of God's plan, who see yourselves as important individuals who contribute to the salvation of the Jewish people and of humanity, chayim kulchem hayom, you are all alive. Our measure of life and death is not the few years that the Lord has given us on this earth. It's the impact that we make. It's how we construct our lives and how we see ourselves in the grand picture of life. I want to tell you 2 stories. In January '91, the day before the Gulf War began, so I was flying from, again, Newark Airport to Detroit, Michigan, where I was supposed to be, I was scheduled to be the guest speaker on behalf of Beis Medrash Novoa, the famous yeshiva in Lakewood, New Jersey, at a fundraising meeting that they were holding in Detroit. So they told me, the yeshiva said, you know, you just go up to the counter, and there'll be a prepaid ticket, and, you know, Well, sometimes when you travel for yeshivas, my friends, the ticket doesn't arrive simultaneously with you. Somehow. And when I came to Northwest Airlines, they didn't know from me, and they didn't know from a ticket, they didn't know from Lakewood Yeshiva, no. And it was the last plane, it was a 4 o'clock plane, I'm supposed to speak at 7 in Detroit. So they said, well, we have 1 seat left. So they sold me a ticket to Detroit for $682, which gave me pause because I could have flown to Tel Aviv that night for $595. But for $682, you get a free copy of the Wall Street Journal. So I sit down on the plane and I'm reading my Wall Street Journal. And in the seat next to me, there's a woman, professional businesswoman, and she takes out her laptop computer and she's typing away and doing, I'm reading the paper. The rabbis that ever have anything to do. And after about 45 minutes, she finishes all of her work. She turns to me and she says, would you mind if I took this section of the Wall Street Journal? I'd like to see how my portfolio is doing. I said, be my guest. My pleasure. My portfolio hasn't changed in 30 years. I don't have to look even. And she opens, I don't know if you remember, if you recall, but right before the Gulf War, the stock market was very depressed. It was even, I think, 300 or 400 points less than it is today. And she uttered audible moans of sadness. She finishes with the paper, and she folds it, she turns to me, and she gives it back to me, and with a smile on her face, but she said it, she said, you know, of course, that this is all your fault. So I said to her, Madam, you are correct, but you have phrased the matter inelegantly. It's not my fault. It's because of me. But it's not my fault. Jonah sits at the bottom of a ship in the middle of a hurricane. And the sailors cast lots. Shomi haro hazeh. What is this hurricane doing here? What's the storm? Why is the Middle East so topsy-turvy? Why could the Lord not have given us a piece of Australia? And the lot falls on the prophet Jonah. And they say to him, who are you? Why is all of this occurring? And the prophet answers them, Ivri Anochi, I am a Jew. Ves Hashem Elokim Borei Shomayim V'Oretz Ani Yorei. And the Lord God who has created heaven and earth, I'm his servant. Except that I'm running away. He had a job for me. He sent me on an assignment, and I don't want to go. I don't want to do what he wants me to do. So he has therefore conspired to bring the storm upon us. And you'll see if you throw me overboard, the storm will abate. And he is thrown overboard because the world would like to throw us overboard. It would be much easier. The great fish, again, comes and swallows him. And God has a conversation with him because it's like the only time I can gain your attention. So now you're forced to talk to me. So the belly of the fish is not only the fish. Sometimes the belly of the fish, God forbid, is a hospital. Sometimes it's a courtroom. Sometimes it's not necessarily in the moments of our greatest successes. God talks to us. The words that we read in the Torah reading of yesterday, God's first words to Adam, Ayeko, where are you? Who are you? Where are you? That question remains. That's the basic question of life. Who am I? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? What's going to happen? Jews underestimate their importance. They think they don't count for much. We go now through the end of the political campaign. Everyone wants you to get out to vote. And the social scientists all tell us that a person should not say, I'm only one vote, what's the difference? But our natural tendency is to feel that way. I'm only one vote. And because of that, therefore, we are very self-deprecating. I was in Jerusalem 4 years ago. Whenever I go to Jerusalem, I always attempt to visit Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial. Not because I'm Holocaust-centered, but at least for a while it puts things into some sort of perspective for me. I saw an ad in the Jerusalem Post, an announcement that Yad Vashem was opening a special wing that day in memory of the 1.5 million Jewish children under the age of 12 that were destroyed. Again, 1.5 million is a big number and doesn't mean anything. But again, I'm a grandfather. There are some times when my grandchildren are in the house and I look at them when they're not aware that I'm looking at them, and then all of a sudden the number dawns with an awful clarity. And this museum, this wing, was built and dedicated by a Jew from Los Angeles by the name of Spiegel, from Beverly Hills. Spiegel was a Hungarian Jew who in the summer of 1944 came to Auschwitz with a wife and his 5-year-old son. 10 months later left alone. And he came to the United States and he came to California and he built for himself a real estate empire, a savings and loan association, and he made a tremendous amount of money. He remarried, he had another family, but all of his life he was haunted by his 5-year-old son. So he gave Yad Vashem $4.5 million to build this memorial to his son and to all of the other 1.5 million sons and daughters of Israel. And then he gave them another $9 million to endow it. I want to tell you, my friends, I am not able to speak for God. In fact, the Lord has not informed me of his plans, not the last 2 weeks at least. I don't know anything. But Spiegel has lost all of his money since. His savings and loan went down into the debacle. It's all been wiped out. The only thing he has left is that museum. When a person has something, he or she has to make good use of it, because there's no guarantee that you're going to have it tomorrow. Our rabbi said, do not say, when I have time, I will be a Torah person, I will study, I'll be better, I'll be charitable. Right now I'm in the middle. Maybe you will never have time. The fragility of being human and of the human condition. So in any event, I thought to myself, well, I'm going to go see Spiegel's museum. I've been to Holocaust museums all over the world, so I have in my mind's eye what I'm going to see. I'm going to see a room full of toys, a room full of suitcases, a room full of hair, a room full of spectacles. I know already what I'm going to see. Therefore, when I came, I was completely unprepared for what I did see. I went to a room, my friends, 8-10 stories tall, 6 or 7 times the size of this hall. And it's pitch black. The room is so dark that you cannot put one foot in front of the other without holding out to the hand of